Hey, everybody, and welcome. Ready for a deep dive into something kind of unique today?
Always up for deep dive. What do we have?
All right, so picture this 1893, Victorian England. But we're not hanging out with Sherlock Holmes.
Okay, you've piqued my interest.
We are cracking open a devotional called The Checkbook of the Bank of Faith.
The Checkbook of the Bank of Faith. That's, something.
Tell me about it, right? It's by Charles Spurgeon.
Oh, okay. I've heard of him. Wasn't he a big deal back then? Like a rock star preacher or something?
Exactly. Super famous preacher, tons of followers, and his writing really packed a punch. So in this devotional, he's got an entry for each day, right?
Right, like most devotionals.
Yeah. And the one we're looking at today, it's the September 25th entry. It's about whether God truly accepts Christ's sacrifice.
Big question.
Huge. And he uses, get this, logic to break it down.
Logic and faith. Now that's an interesting combo.
Right. It's like he's saying to his readers, like, hey, don't just take my word for it.
Yeah.
Think it through.
I like that. Spurgeon, using logic to explain faith. What's the logic behind that, do you think?
Well, it seems like he's really trying to connect with people on a deeper level, you know?
Yeah.
Because back then, Victorian England, think about it, so much change happening. Industrial Revolution, new scientific discoveries. I mean, people were looking for something solid to hold on to.
They needed that reassurance amidst all the chaos.
Absolutely. And Spurgeon, with his sharp mind and powerful way of speaking, he offered them that assurance, grounded in faith ain't a reason.
He met people where they were at, spoke their language.
Exactly. So to make his point, he goes to this passage in Judges 13.23, where it says, if the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would not have received a burnt offering and a meat offering at our hands, neither would he have showed us all these things.
Okay, so he's pulling from the Old Testament here.
He is. And after quoting this verse, he points out that this isn't just some, random thought. He calls it an inference fairly drawn from the Bible itself.
An inference fairly drawn. So he's saying we can use our brains, our ability to reason, to understand God's actions.
Yes, and that's what makes this so fascinating. He's encouraging his congregation, his readers, to engage with their faith on a deeper level, to think critically, to see those connections between what God does and what it tells us about who he is.
So how does this tie back to the idea of God accepting Christ's sacrifice?
Well, that's where the story in Judges comes in. It's about this couple, Manoah and his wife, and they get a visit from an angel.
Okay, angelic visit. Always interesting.
Right. And the angel tells them they're going to have a son.
Good news, right?
You'd think so. But Manoah, he kind of freaks out.
Well, yeah, I mean, angels just showing up wasn't exactly an everyday thing, even back then.
Exactly. And he starts worrying, like, what if God is about to punish us?
Understandable fear, to be honest.
Totally. But here's where it gets interesting. His wife steps in, and she uses the same kind of logic that Spurgeon will use centuries later.
What does she say?
She asked Manoah, basically, if God wanted us dead, why would he send an angel to give us this amazing news about our son? It wouldn't make sense.
She's got a point.
Right. And just like Manoah's wife finds this reassurance in God's actions, Spurgeon is doing the same thing, but with Christ's sacrifice.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. It's like he's saying, look at the evidence. God gave us his son. He wouldn't have done that if he didn't accept us, right?
Exactly. And that's why, even over a century later, this devotional still resonates with people.
Because we still ask those same questions, right?
Yeah, we all have those moments of doubt, those, is God really there for me? Does he truly love me? Moments.
Absolutely. We want that assurance.
And Spurgeon gives us a way to approach those big, scary questions with both our hearts and our minds.
Not just blind faith, but a faith that's grounded in reason. It's really quite beautiful.
It really is. And it reminds us that God's love, his forgiveness, it's not random. It's intentional. And it points to something bigger, something that doesn't change. It's like, remember that spiritual checkbook Spurgeon talks about?
Yeah.
We can draw on God's promises, his acceptance, whenever we need it, knowing it's always there.
I love that. It's such a comforting thought.
It really is. Makes you think, doesn't it? If faith really is like a checkbook, how does that change the way we see our relationship with God? Something to ponder, don't you think?
Definitely something to ponder.
Thanks for diving deep with me today.
Anytime. That was a good one.